the DNC is going to do anything and everything to stop any anti-establishment progressive. I mean, you just accurately described our system as a plutocracy. That's not going to stand in the Democratic Party. Even I still think it's worth pursuing regardless of that fact, but a lot of people are pessimistic about them.
State, one of the moderators said to Donald Trump, well, if you don't win the nomination, will you still support the Republican nominee? And you might remember what his response was. It was,
depends on how you treat me. Depends on how you treat me.
Depends on how you treat me.
Right.
And in retrospect, I think that's the right answer. By the way, Democrats tend to have a kind of codependent relationship with the DNC that the Republicans don't have with the RNC. You know, the RNC in 2016 said, well, you can have Marco Rubio, you can have Jeb Bush, you can have John Kasich. And then their electorate said, we want Donald Trump. Here, people say, oh,
Correct.
The DNC is bad. It's a private corporation.
So I've often advocated for the strategy of running as a Democrat, seeing how they treat you. If you
depends on how you treat me.
Seeing how they treat you. If you
depends on how you treat me.
Feel that you're treated unfairly, then continuing the challenge as a third party candidate. So I personally, like I said, I've advocated that strategy and would recommend that strategy. It's interesting to hear the way you're thinking about that.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to your regular INN news break. We're really just here to roast the shit out of some politicians in the Vanguard.
Yeah.
But
how you doing, Crab?
Doing all right. I discovered a new cauliflower recipe today. Mostly just working. I've been looking into this like Chat GPT stuff, and it's like scary. Like I'm worried especially it feels like AI art was like just like 2 weeks ago. Like everyone
you
was
gotta tell me what. I'm somewhat of a boomer, so you gotta tell me what that is, because I saw you tweet that out.
It's an AI bot where it's completely free, where you type in like a prompt. And are you familiar? You're already familiar with like how AI art works, right? Like you just type in a prompt and then like it generates that image out of just a bunch of data.
Right.
So it does the same thing with just information, I guess, right? It can give you like concepts or ideas, but like most importantly, it's like it knows everything. You just copy and paste like math equations. I want to go back into high school where I could just use it to cheat on my homework. Just for that. Just to do it once. Not even once. Just see. I wish I could live like multiple timelines to see like what's going on over there.
Right.
But
anyway, do you want to?
Yeah, let's jump. Okay,
you kind of wanted to do this anyway, and considering.
Oh, I'm always down.
Always. The thing is, I'm not. No, you are. I'm not always, because I don't necessarily believe that, especially given like any of this stuff, just as far as the drama, like I'm just kind of like, when I'm not necessarily for that, but
it's not even the drama. This is a person running for Congress. I mean, president.
True. But my take on this is, and I'll probably get more into it later, but I think my thesis of this whole thing, if you will, is like, don't lie to your audience, and that's what, Vanguard did yesterday. I just happened to be in their stream, because actually I didn't know about this Marianne thing, because I had a tough week at work, so I really wasn't, really on Twitter that much this week, other than, just doing INN news stuff. And when was it? I think it had to be on Thursday. Was it Thursday? It had to be Thursday. I started hearing the murmurs about this. And then hearing the Vanguard and RBN, was somehow involved. And then I kind of watched what Gavin was doing. Like he basically was kind of watching the basically the
what's funny?
fallout.
Like
Go
they're
ahead.
two totally separate interviews. And like the only reason why this is a thing is because the Vanguard involved themselves. They made a video like with the title like RBN is like, clownish.
No,
Or
like that's the issue that I have with it. It's like
they're
you're going,
coming out
if you're
here
going, if
as
you're going to
he says,
do
like have to save a politician. Like just
right, if you're going to do commentary, especially if you're going to try and like own people, like you got to do it properly, which they didn't do. They kind of played like the last 5 minutes, and actually, like I saw the tail end. So what happened was like I saw like the stream with RBN, saw the tail end of that, like when Roman CJ came in, and I guess they kind of cut it to a certain point. I thought that was the issue that the Vanguard started talking about, and people online were starting to talk about it. And then I happened to watch Vanguard, and then I saw, like the entirety of, what was discussed after the stream, like after Marianne had left, which Gavin was commenting on his own. And then he was like, oh, I'm going to have Zach kind of talk about it later, like the next day. Which was yesterday, Friday. And then I happened to watch that, and all they were talking about was the last few minutes when RBN crew were talking about it versus the interview itself. So my thing was, if you were going to do that, do it properly. Like, comment on the interview, because I watched both interviews, and I think Marianne said a lot of interesting stuff that should give like huge red flags for people who are even considering, supporting Marianne, that I think should be noted. And the Vanguard didn't do that,
she's not even a good politician. Like even if she was like your standard politician, like she gives me like honestly, she says a lot of the spiritual woo stuff that like I'm kind of like a lot of like the Eastern philosophy kind of like meditative mindfulness stuff, which like I'm kind of down for. But then she does like this really like neoliberal like Israeli shit where she's openly said that she's for a two-state solution. That's already just one. That's just
Right.
one. That's besides all the other shit. And then like on the surface, really, she just gives me AOC vibes. It's really just like it's just like an older AOC to me. I mean,
Right.
like, and that alone should be like, guys, like, and hopefully we can get into this because like there's a specific portion of this, but like, guys, like, how many times have we done this already? Can we try like Bernie in 2016? Is really when I was like kind of like introduced to the whole thing, and when he came to Rutgers,
Right.
Then 2020 he ran again, and within that time span, we've also elected a ton of these, quote unquote, like progressive Congress people who what have they really done? And are they like they're not even the squad? They're not, because they don't vote as a squad. They don't vote as a block or a squad. So they're not really the squad. So what are they? They're just Democrats, right?
Yeah.
Well, how many times do we have to do this over and over and over again until we say, okay, we're going to try a different option?
Right.
Gavin here, he's going to like, this is the problem. Like, I really think what their issue is that they're sort of like a Joe Rogan-esque, where they kind of morph into their guest, where they have to like agree with the opinions of and this is not like necessarily true for like people who are like in their like not like outside of their clique, like Aaron Mate, for example. But like it's clear that they're having to attach themselves to a very specific audience, which happens to be like the Sam Cedar, Miami Gator types. And
Right.
honestly, like none of this has to do with Jimmy Dore. None of it does. But
No, well,
it's just like pure association. There's like this faction thing going on where everyone's like a tribal fucking maniac. It doesn't make any
Well,
sense.
But I just feel like, as you were saying, and I'm going to elaborate more on what you said, we've done this experiment twice. You know, we did Bernie in 2016. We did Bernie in
Arguably more
2020.
than twice. But yeah.
Yeah, arguably more than twice. But I think as far as presidential, twice.
As far as
You
presidential,
know, yeah. What makes Marianne think that running in the Democratic Party is going to help the left's cause in terms of bringing progressive ideas and legislation, you know, make it a reality, when it was very clear, especially from 2020, that if the Democrats don't want something, they will go out of their way to ensure that that happens. Like, Bernie aside, like, and I don't want to necessarily, but look at what happened to Tulsi. You know, say what you want about her, but she was talking about anti-war, and, you know, and they basically changed the rules in as far as, or let me give another example, Mike Gravel. You know, you saw how, like, they essentially changed the rules, so essentially, like, he wouldn't be able to debate. You know, the DNC changes the rules constantly to fit, you know, to have people who are like somewhat anti-imperialist away from like who they basically select as their nominee. So knowing all of that history, you know, what makes Marianne think that going through the Democratic Party is actually the way to try, as she says, to bring the conversation of these left issues to a high audience? Like the like Medicare for All, like, it has majority support at this point. I don't know if the exact numbers
The
right now.
majority of Republicans support Medicare for All.
Right. At this point.
It's a bipartisan issue. Bipartisan.
Right, I'm just saying, like, who knows what the numbers are, given like we're in a pandemic and really mainstream media has basically not touched it, you know. And even the squad has basically not talked about it really, other than maybe the virtual tweet every once in a while. But like health Medicare for all, like $15 min wage, you know, no war, you know, these are popular policies. So we don't need to talk about it. We need to have action on those things. And the fact that Marianne, and I'm not sure if you're going to play this clip, but she basically said to Gavin and Zach, like, oh, I hope that I'll counterpunch, meaning I hope I'll counterpunch against Biden in the debate. Like, you want people to support you and possibly give you money in the hope that you're going to call out Biden? Nah. Like, that doesn't sit well with me. Like, you better call him out, or what are you doing this for? You know, is it to elevate your own status or your own brand? That's what I really think it is a vanity project for her.
Yeah. So, and I don't know, like, if you want to get into your super chats first, or if you want to get to that later, but Marianne has specifically said, like, and I'm trying to find the part where the dirty break part. I didn't timestamp it. I'm fucking, but she said that even if she loses, the benefit to her, like in her mind, is that she wants to shift the conversation, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which is really realistically not what we need right now. And it's not, honestly, we don't fucking have time for that right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's like multiple national crises going on, both in the world and the United States right now.
Right.
And people aren't, warmed up to that idea yet, but some people yeah, let's
so
do this.
Why don't you play I think it's important to kind of watch what she said about the dirty break.
Yeah, this is it
On
right here.
Vanguard,
I'm
and then
hoping
watch,
this is.
and then watch what was said on RBN,
Either to
because
articulate and effectuate that change.
But it does seem
Redoing. I am not part of that game.
Biden, whether it's you or another.
Not enough. Doesn't even.
You mentioned the fact that the Democrats are now basically just rigging their primaries, and I think a lot of us became savvy to that fact watching what they did to Bernie Sanders also, as you mentioned. And, you know, Marianne, we asked our audience member some questions that they had for you, and one of the big ones we got from our audience was the idea of, you know, yes, they're excited about you running in the Democratic primary. They want someone to challenge Biden, whether it's you or another progressive. People want that. But there's also an awareness, I think, that the DNC is going to do anything and everything to stop any anti-establishment progressive. I mean, you just accurately described our system as a plutocracy. That's not going to stand in the Democratic Party. Even I still think it's worth pursuing regardless of that fact. But a lot of
Why? That's my question. Why?
right.
Like, listen
Yeah.
carefully, because like he is he's recognizing the fact that, and both of them are, they're recognizing that we have a duopoly system, that where at this point we don't have much control besides organizing, really.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But he says, "Oh, I'm still okay with the Democrat strategy." Why? And I think it's just because she's here, or
Yeah,
if he wasn't like friends with Crystal and Kyle.
I just think he kind of said that because I think he just kind of wants to get in her good graces somewhat. Like, he doesn't want to kind of come off as a dick, you know, like, you know, because it's almost going to be like, why have her on if you're not necessarily supportive of what she does or what she's doing? So, but again, as we said, we know the experiment, you know, like, the Democratic Party is not going to allow Marianne to get far, number one. Number two, and this is something that I thought about earlier today, like, say, like, technically she's exploring the idea. No, if you're doing an exploratory committee, you're running. You know, she hasn't made a formal announcement yet, but that basically is, you're running. Like, where is she going to get her support from? Because is it going to be from Bernie Sanders?
Exactly.
Is it going to be from the squad?
Politically,
so, like,
she is weaker than Bernie Sanders.
Right.
And you want to try that?
Right.
You need if you're gonna do that again, you need something stronger than Bernie Sanders. And Marianne is not it.
Right.
She is not it.
Bernie has made it quite clear that he wasn't going to run if Biden is running for re-election. So, and we know that he and the squad are not going to go against their party at this point to endorse Marianne for anything. So basically, it's like, who is going to endorse her in terms of, you know, her campaign, and then, like, in a debate? She's basically, as you said, she's weaker than Bernie, you know, because at least he had support. So
I really think she just wants to be a part of the squad's Instagram pictures. That's it. She wants the.
No, I don't. No, I don't. I mean, no, I don't think she. It's not that I think she wants that. I think she's just looking.
She's a millionaire. She's a millionaire. I mean, like, what else? What more
I think
could
she's doing. I think, you know, it's funny how she mentioned that Trump quote, like, it depends how you treat me. I think she's pulling a Trump. She's looking like Trump had no.
She says she wants to be the anti-Trump.
Yeah, she's not. She's pulling the Trump in the sense of, oh, I don't really care about being a president. Like, he just wanted to increase his profile, you know, and then, like, people actually liked him, and then, like, he's just kind of like, oh, shit. Like, I actually, am actually going to be president. I don't think he really wanted to be president. I think he was just looking to make money off of the presidency. I think Marianne is actually doing the same thing. She's more like Trump than Bernie to me. Just another rich person.
That's true. That's good.
Just another rich person who is looking to increase their media and celebrity profile. That's all this is. As I said, it's a vanity project for her. Because as I said, like, if she was really serious, if like where you look at, on this interview, she basically was like, I hope to, counter a punch against Joe Biden in the debate, which is not what we would want from her if she was serious. We would expect that she would, not hope that she would. People will not give money to you or support you in the hope that you'll go against the establishment. It's the idea that you do. So that, to me, right there is like, you're not serious. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to stray too far away. We're gonna play back from the.
No, but I think this is around where they talk about.
I just wanted to highlight the fact that, like, so there's two conflicting questions here. First, now he's saying that there is a duopoly and that running through the Democratic Party is a sham. It's a dead end road.
DNC is going to do anything and everything to stop any anti-establishment progressive. I mean, you just accurately described our system as a plutocracy. That's not going to stay party. Even I still think it's worth pursuing regardless of that fact, but a lot of people are pessimistic about him treating you fairly or any anti-establishment progressive unfairly. And for that reason, a lot of people were wondering if you would have any interest in pursuing a strategy known as a dirty break, which is if your attempt to secure the nomination is unsuccessful thanks to their efforts to rig it or to treat you unfairly. Is there any chance you would then pursue a third party challenge after the primary ends? Continue this resistance to the corporate duopoly from outside of it.
When the Republican debates were happening, I think in 2016. And all those Republicans were up on the debate stage, one of the moderators said to Donald Trump, well, if you don't win the nomination, will you still support the Republican nominee? And you might remember what his response was. It was, depends on how you treat me.
Right.
And in retrospect, I think that's a right answer. I mean, this idea, the political parties aren't even mentioned in the.
Can I just say she had to think of that, prep that in her mind, and then say that, and then also process at the same time. Yes, that's a good thing to say.
Yeah,
it's a horrible.
That was such a politician answer.
That was the like, I'm trying to be a squad member answer. Like, you might as well just been like, so what do you? Gavin basically just asked the equivalent of like, okay, so what are you about? Are you going to run? Are you actually going to run against the machine, even if they try to dupe you? And then she says, "Oh, I want to no. We'll see how they play.
But that's the thing.
She wants to do it. She wants to be in the. She wants to be. She wants to work in the system.
Right. But that's the thing. We know how they're going to play. We've seen it happen twice. At least, again, presidential, and we've seen it, with Nina Turner, like, more recently. Like, she knows how the game is played. So the idea of her saying, it depends how they treat me, it's kind of like, why would you go for that? If anything, it's like you would have more control being able, as I say on INN News often, control the narrative by running outside of the duopoly. And it's just so funny, like, how I think Justice Democrats, especially given their principles or their bylaws, like, encourage them to support third parties.
Because what else could that mean? Like, in what, like, I'm trying to like fathom in my head like some imaginary world where like she runs anti-establishment, and then the Democratic Party is like is down for it, and they start supporting her in that like quest, and nothing happens the same way that they treated Bernie in Iowa, or how they smeared him as a Russian or misogynist, and all the media shit. So I'll just keep playing this. I'm gonna get a water real quick.
Okay.
Constitution, and this idea of the DNC and the RNC having the kind of power they have. By the way, Democrats tend to have a relationship with the DNC that the Republicans don't have with the RNC. You know, the RNC in 2016 said, well, you can have Marco Rubio, you can have Jeb Bush, you can have John Kasich. And their electorate said, we want Donald Trump. Here, people say, oh,
Correct.
the DNC's dead. It's a private corporation.
Yeah.
So it's already proven, made clear in court after the 2016 election that they did not feel that they actually owed it to the people, that it was a fully democratic election. I'm very aware of the history of third parties in this country. Abolition came from the Abolitionist Party, women's suffrage from the Women's Party, Social Security from the Socialist Party. I'm aware of the unholy alliance that has been formed, Democrats and Republicans, making it very difficult for third party independent candidates, which I was when I tried to run for Congress. That was a very naive mistake I made. That's the thing. I don't think there's a right or wrong here. I think that the whole system's breakdown, and we have to work.
Wait, did she say that she tried running third party? Is that true?
People in the chat, if you have an idea,
made
you
clear
can
in
share.
court
But I had no idea
after the
of this
2016
before.
election that they did not feel that they actually owed it to that it was a fully democratic election. I'm very aware of the history of third parties in this country. Abolition came from the Abolitionist Party, women's suffrage from the Women's Party, Social Security from the Socialist Party. I'm aware of the unholy alliance that has been formed by both Democrats and Republicans, making it very difficult for third party independent candidates, which I was.
She says she's an independent candidate. Is that true?
Not if you're running as a Democrat.
So she's just lying.
I
mean, I don't know. This needs to be fact checked, but
yeah, I don't even think I'm honestly think she doesn't even know what she's saying here. She's just making up a word salad here. I think she's just thinking of anything that comes in her head.
This is what they do. They have to tiptoe the line, and this is exactly what the Vanguard does. They have to tiptoe the line between like actual workers' perspective versus like fame and drama and celebrity worship,
right?
Because that's all it is. It's literally them on a Zoom call, fanboying over whatever politician or like media star comes next. It's like
right. But I think as Mastermind said, she you say flirting with a dirty break, but she won't commit. I don't even think she's even flirting with the idea. I think this is basically from what this word salad that she gave.
Well, yeah, she's saying it out loud. She's saying
she's saying what they want to hear or what she thinks our audience wants to hear without saying it. But to me, that's an outright no. The fact that Gavin asked her, will you do a dirty break? Really, that should be a yes or no response. We shouldn't have had 2 minutes to basically have her say, I think about it, so that's a no. She's not planning to do a dirty break. She's just planning to run in the Democratic Party and see how far she goes. In her mind, at least I can get to elevate the conversation as far as progressive issues. And see where I go from there. But hopefully I'll be rich. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah.
When I tried to run for Congress, that was a very naive mistake I made. That's the thing. I don't think there's a right or wrong here. I think that the whole system's breakdown, and we have to work on every possible level.
She was an independent.
If somebody feels, let's say Andrew Yang, if he feels what he's supposed to do is start a third
Pat,
party,
do you know
an
she ever
industry
ran
could
as an
start a third
independent?
party. If somebody else feels like I gotta go, I'm gonna go green. A lot of that also has to do with your
It doesn't
district.
matter if you call
It
yourself.
has to do with your district, has to do with your
saying
state.
running as an independent.
For me, part of it, I suppose, is nostalgia. I do remember a time in my lifetime where, at least more than not, the Democratic Party was a container, a conduit for genuine, unabashed, fundamental advocacy for the working people.
How old is she?
Right.
When?
Hold on, I'll check.
How
She's
old
probably
is
in her 50s. Let me double check real fast. Or if
She
you
was
know
born
in
in
the chat.
52. So what, like Reagan years? No, that's 80s.
No,
So
she
what is that, Carter?
is
No.
yeah, 1952. So
What president?
what she so
That's just like that. That's just not true. I mean, if you take an
well,
honest, genuine look, I mean, I really like encourage people to read Howard Zinn's. He just goes over the entire history.
right, but in a way, and let's preface this. Like she grew up in 1950s, so she became of age like in the 60s. So I would say generally for her as a white person, like in the middle class, because she wasn't rich by any means. I think she has said that. But white middle class person, I think she grew up in Texas, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
I would say
She's
as a white person
70.
back then, she was doing pretty well, like relatively well. I would say that for people of color necessarily, especially black people, but for her, she probably was. So yeah, I think it's kind of important to make that distinction that, she knew of a good time, in terms of economic prosperity somewhat as a middle class, within a middle class family in the Midwest South back in the 60s. That wasn't the case for black people. So notice, so I think that's very interesting that she says that when she can say that, but that wasn't the case for everybody, living in this country.
It's not even that. It's like it's not even accurate. Like even JFK had some like imperialist tendencies to him. He wasn't a saint by any means, especially when it comes to like the Asian countries like China. But like he was pretty like in terms of like Cuba and like all the shit going down south. He was pretty good.
I think a lot of this is nostalgia.
Yeah, but I mean, she mentions FDR. She's going to do it at some point. But
I'm enough of a history buff to be very aware of what the Democratic Party of Franklin Roosevelt, what his Democratic.
So we're knowing that she was not aware. She was not even born during this time, and she's running on a platform based on nostalgia for FDR. Delano Roosevelt, the guy who.
Yeah, I think that again, that's what I was saying.
Crisis.
This is like nostalgia for her. Like during the JFK years, that was known
Even
as
FDR wasn't a good guy.
right.
I'm sorry to break it to you guys.
But like for her, and I think a lot of people of her age, that was during like the JFK years. Those were known as the catalog.
Honestly,
so like,
can I have a hot take real quick? If you
sure.
like saying that FDR was like a based president is like probably one of the most liberal things you can say.
Right.
Like that's
I
like
don't
shit.
think, I don't think anyone
because like your inspiration is a guy who dropped 2 atomic bombs and his dad was the main profiteer of China's opium crisis. That's all opium money. You don't think like he was a congressman his entire life. His dad was like a boatman or something like that, and he's like living this like lavish life with like tons of yachts. Where do you think that money came from? His dad, like if you look like the Delano Roosevelt Foundation, is funded by the Russell Trust, which is the main profiteer of the China opium crisis.
But I think you see that
either way, these are not good people. They're not.
But
like,
I think again, like it's the same thing. Like if just kind of thinking of a more contemporary example, like Clinton, like people forget the atrocities that he did, but I think people mostly remember him. Like, I mean, for me growing up, I moved to the US at that point, and like I remember like that whole campaign, because that was kind of not a spectacle, but it was a huge thing that Clinton was a relatively younger guy. He was very suave. He was going like on all these like night show talk, which I don't think really any president had really done prior to that. The biggest thing that I remember, like when I was a teenager, like he went on the Arsenio Hall show, like those of you who are old enough to know who he is, playing the saxophone. And like he basically won like the hearts of the Black people because because he was able to play the saxophone, essentially, among other things. And up until Obama, like people like kind of nicked him like the first Black president, quote unquote, because he was kind of cool with Black people, allegedly. But like,
it's a popularity contest.
It's
for the most part, like fundamentally, it's a popularity contest, no question about it.
Right.
It's not even.
So I think that's really what it is. It's just we kind of remember presidents for what their seemingly good traits are.
Well, that's also why policy doesn't fucking matter to these people. It's all
Right.
about the drama, because you don't have to run on policy. You have to run on looking cool. And that's why her main talking point is to try to like look, like something else.
Yeah.
Politics were about, although he himself got to a point at one point where enough of this with all the obstruction he had. For me, if I run, they're going to work very hard to invisibilize me. They will have a much easier time invisibilizing me if I'm running third party. I want to be in there. I want a chance to debate Joe Biden.
Yeah. I think that's what's important, right? Because I often feel that by the time third-party candidates enter the general election, they haven't had enough time to gain the attraction that you do obtain thanks to those debates and participating in the media cycle and that circus that comes along with the primary. So I've often advocated for the strategy of running as a Democrat, seeing how they treat you. If you feel that you're treated unfairly, then continuing the challenge as a third-party candidate. So I personally,
But you're going to treat you unfairly, so what's the point?
Yeah, like what is this testing? Like, do we not know at this point? What is it that we don't know? That's because, like I said in the beginning, like how many times do we have to do this? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, right? And and expecting a different result.
Right.
That's that is really what we're doing here. It's not like swapping the people is making any difference at all. It's pretty evident at this point.
Yeah.
You want to do this again?
No, I think that's it.
Personally, like I dropped like $230, like the equivalent of like $230 on the Bernie campaign. I'm not getting that back.
Right.
And that's like a PSE&G bill. Like that's like 2 months of electric. That's like a really big like grocery trip, or like you know what I mean? Like that's something that's not something that like that's something that people give to because they really, really believe in it. And I really, really believe I was really bought in at the time.
I'm actually going to say, I'm not sure how much of this you want to play, but I'm going to share
I'm
something.
I'm almost done.
Okay. I want to share something that, because there was no pushback here.
No. There's another thing I want to mention, but hold on.
Let's I want to say this though. Just kind of a little behind the scenes. Like those of you, like I guess come off as very confident online. I'm really not. Like I'm really like Greg has met me in person. I'm very shy in person. But like when I was at the Capitol 2 years ago with the whole housing moratorium thing, and I think a lot of people know me, in the space as being that person who yelled to AOC, like, what about the 10%? Honestly, like I was scared shitless to say something. The only reason that I had the courage to speak up and say something was because Franco, who was on the ground, like trying to get footage, where by the squad was, and I was sitting on the Capitol steps watching AOC give that that speech where she was like, you guys know what that was, and
So you
like,
knew it was going to be recorded. Is that what? So you knew it was going to be recorded.
what was? I was recording it.
Oh yeah, okay.
I was recording it on my phone. Like that whole thing. So I wanted to say something. I was just recording it, but then like I suddenly had the heart to say something, and I was very scared too. Because I was afraid of what people like. Keep in mind, like around me, it was just a lot of young kids. Like I probably might have been. So I think a lot of them were like either interns at Congress, or like college students who happen to be off or whatever. There may have been a few people about my age who were there, like through organizers or whatever, but it was very young, and I was so scared to say something because I was so afraid that this group of people, like Liz Warren spoke earlier, and people were like, ah, and like, like people were just kind of smitten with the celebrity of being so close to Cori Bush and AOC. I didn't want them coming at me necessarily, but
Politicians aren't people, guys. I mean,
right.
and also like with the celebrity worship thing, there's like, you have to kind of like see through into like the humanity of these people and like understand that they're like flawed human beings, and
But
kind of
actually,
like
no, but it
level
wasn't so
that
much.
down.
It wasn't
I
so
mean,
much about it.
Because I think of Lucy, like when she went to go to the AOC town hall, and
Yeah,
like
but
speaking up like that, and like being,
right,
and
but
and telling it, like after AOC was like lo siento, she was like no señorita, no, and I was like, fuck yes, Lucy, fuck
right.
yes.
But
And
I remember for
you have to
me,
heckle the shit out of these people. It doesn't matter at the end because like they're the ones that are like dictating policy that is just like killing people.
yeah.
So
But for me, again, it wasn't so much about AOC or Cori Bush. It was the crowd, because I didn't want them kind of coming off me and being like, "Oh, you like." And the thing is, just before that, there was a neighborhood commissioner who spoke before. And most of you don't know this, but there was a neighborhood commissioner who spoke to the crowd because the idea was that they were going to, like AOC and others were doing like a press thing with CNN or whatever, and then they were going to come and talk to us afterward. So just before that, this advisory neighborhood commissioner spoke to the crowd and was like, "Look, this isn't over, but." He essentially said, this is not over. We have to continue fighting, but basically we need to give respect, some or those lines, to AOC and Cori Bush for whatever they were going to do. So basically he was like, don't say shit, like, don't, like, it was his roundabout way of saying, like, don't challenge them at all. So going off of that, and like watching AOC say what she was saying back then, like I was kind of like, oh God, like what is like, but then Franco spoke up, and so that gave me the courage to kind of speak up and kind of, I initially said, like, what are you going to do? Like you asked us you told us what we're going to do. So what are you? And then that whole exchange, which went viral. But funny enough, like, after that, I had maybe about 3 people who kind of thanked me, who said, thank you for doing that because we were so afraid to say something. And we really appreciate you speaking up. So I say all of that as a long aside. I feel like, and I don't want to give Gavin and Zach credit so much, but my guess is, and this is just a guess, they were probably afraid to push back on Marianne because of their audience that they've kind of cultivated of what might happen to them personally.
Oh, of course, yeah. No, they're young, and they're kid. Like
I mean,
they look relatively young. I would assume that they're like what, like my age.
Probably younger than you.
I'm about to turn 27.
But yeah, but they're probably younger than you. But yeah, they're definitely in their 20s. So I just feel like they were probably scared to kind of push back on Marianne
You
because
can see it, like you can see them kind of like with the nervousness when they were talking to people like Kyle Kalinske.
Mhm.
They
But
don't
it's
want to
funny,
push back on these people because they
but
don't
it's
want to
funny,
upset them.
like,
They want to be part of the crowd.
but yeah, but like, it's funny that for Marianne and Crystal and Kyle, like,
It's the
they
click. Like that's like
they're more
that's like
like
what it is.
this. But then, like, when it was with and Ryan Graham, but then when it was like with Lee Camp and Aaron Mate, like, they were very aggressive, probably overly
Unnecessarily.
aggressive. Like,
Do you see you have to see the contrast between these two interviews.
right.
And you're gonna tell
So,
me that they're not biased motherfuckers? Like they heckled the shit out of like they laughed at Aaron's face while
right.
the whole chat. I was there. The whole chat was roasting the shit out of them.
Right.
And if you
So,
go to that video, like it's
but
pretty bad.
yeah, but I think a lot of it is, like the people who are seemingly like the Jimmy Dore satellites in their mind deserve to get heckled, and the ones that I would argue are much more closer to the establishment than, let's say, Jimmy is, they're the ones that get the more subdued and the more respectful, Sack and Gavin here.
Well, because you know what it was? It wasn't an Aaron Mate interview. It was a proxy Jackson Hinkle interview where they wanted to talk shit and be like, "Oh, why are you associating with the Jimmy Dore, Jackson Hinkle types?" Meanwhile, Aaron's like, "What are you talking? Like, why don't you just ask these people? Like, I don't know what you're like.
Right.
I just do my own, like, I work for the Gray Zone. That's
Right.
like, it's not
And I haven't watched Jackson streams in a minute, but like I know at least from people just within the space, like Jackson has said, I will come on their show to talk to you. Right? You would think that they would take advantage of that, especially given the amount of views that they would get on their channel or Jackson's to do that, because I think a lot of people have been looking for that and they have not taken him up on that. I wonder why. Because they are very intellectually, and I'm not the biggest intellectual either, but I kind of know my lane. Like I kind of do my thing on the news, and then I kind of go about my business because I have an actual job and responsibilities that I need to take care of. I'm not as embedded in the space as I probably should be, but I think in a way that's kind of a blessing in a sense, because I don't want to necessarily get so involved in it that much that I get caught up with all of this stuff. But,
and honestly, like
Zach and Gavin had the opportunity to debate Jackson and you didn't take it.
And I'm tired of this fucking okay, like have your own opinions about Jackson Hinkle. Like honestly, like at this point, I think he's kind of fallen off some kind of end, fallen for some kind of brand thing. But that's Hinkle's business. Despite what you think of Jimmy Dore gives at least some highlights to some activist circles, like the Assange rally, like things some things that are on the ground. Despite all of that, we don't even have to talk about Jimmy Dore. There's other things going on in the world that are not Jimmy Dore that are important to contributing to the concept, or at least what the plan for leftism, or whatever organizing circle that looks like on the ground.
Right.
But like Jimmy Dore gets like shifted into these like conversations. They insert it into a place where you can. It's kind of like a straw man in and of itself, where you could just use anywhere. It's a free straw man. But what about Jimmy Dore?
Right.
And really, it's really not that important. Like you tell me, like, would we be anywhere different if Jimmy Dore just didn't exist?
Well, here's the thing.
How much more progress?
Well, here's the thing. People act as if Jimmy Dore is like this all-powerful god. Like, people don't know.
Why is that? Why
But-
can't would we be able to get along if it wasn't for Jimmy? Like, if Jimmy Dore just didn't exist? Like, I
Right,
don't understand.
but here's the thing. People do not know, outside of Twitter and maybe in our own collective bubble, people don't know who Jimmy Dore is. Like, people know of Alex Jones
People
more
don't
than
give
they
a
know.
fuck. They don't
Like,
give
I
a
can
shit.
I can go to work and ask people at my job, do you know who Jimmy Dore is? Most of them will probably say no. They will know who Alex Jones is. You know, like, no one knows who he is. So, but the idea, like, the powers that be give him this kind of pseudo power that he doesn't necessarily have, I think is kind of funny to me, because at the end of the day, you know, and you know, I don't agree with Jimmy on everything. You shouldn't, you know.
Yeah,
like,
no, I mean, no, me neither. I mean,
but you know, for the things like when it's truth, and this is the thing, and like especially on the left, it's like, or like you can really say it on both sides of the aisle, but like the idea of like you should dismiss the truth because it's someone that you don't like. I'm just kind of like, no, like the truth is the truth, no matter who says it. You know, the truth should be able to stand on its own. It's a question of what you do with it. That's the issue. But, you know, like, as much as faults that Jimmy does have, and we all have them, like, he's been right on many things. And I think, if anything, more often than not, he's usually ahead of the curve on many things. Not everything, but many things. And so you have to give credit where credit is due. Like, and I'll say this to Vanguard, you know, like, I think in the stream, like, where I gave a super chat, and shout out to Nikki, because I know you saw that, you know, I know you're in the
I
chat.
told him, I'm like, why'd you fucking give them money? Why'd you do that?
Look, you know what? As much as I did, first of all, I didn't want to give them that much, but in a way, I'm glad I did, because they kind of exposed themselves, you know, because they straight up lied to their audience about something that Marianne didn't say. I think we'll get into that later, but you know,
do you want to watch the RBN one real quick?
sure.
This one's relatively short.
Okay, but yeah, but like consider, but just giving our audience a little bit of, so mostly we're talking about the dirty break, you know. So Marianne, so Gavin and Zach asked her about the dirty break, and she just gives a word salad and an answer. To me, and I'm sure to most of you, that that basically means no, I am not interested to do a dirty break. Now, contrast that to RBN when they asked her the same question, right? So I just want to give you that preface there between the two interviews, at least for that. But also, you know, with what Nick and Sabby were doing, like on the interview with Marianne. So go ahead, Crab.
Neutral. Go ahead.
Now, I honestly think the only reason she did this is because of Savvy. That's the only reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's because she knows Savvy. She's interviewed her before.
I don't think it's only just that. But I think nice. Like, you know, I think like, you know, I think like Sabby is similar to me in the sense of, you know, like, you know, we're put together, you know, we're sweet, you know, look, I'm known as Caribou and INN, like I'm the sweet one, I'm the wholesome one, you know, like people don't necessarily assume like I'm going to be like a Rome or even Nick or CJ. Like Sabby comes off in a similar way, but she basically uses her words. She has her moments, but she doesn't.
Fire if she really wants to.
But Sally doesn't necessarily yell. She just kind of tells it like in a firm voice, whereas
she's a professor. That's why she has a sense of professionalism that like you
right.
can't really get.
Right. So, and I feel like I kind of walk around with that same type of professionalism too. I think
you're also a teacher, yeah.
Right. So given my job, I have to, you know. But you know, but I think mostly I believe that Marianne thought like, oh, I gave like, and he had a softball interview with the Vanguard with RBN, especially because Sabby likes me, seemingly, I'm sure that she was going to give me an easy time too. That's what I really think it is. It was more a matter of thinking like she kind of assumed like she would be able to kind of do with Vanguard what she did with RBN, and and we know that wasn't the case at all. But keep going.
In class on the Bernie campaign, and what did we get? We got a guy in a movement who threw away his political revolution, who abandoned his outside game, and what I consider $100 million thrown in the drain.
Yep.
Now, what we got by investing that kind of money is literally PR agents of the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders is a war pig who's funding war. They are apologizing for the same things they used to criticize.
Bernie's out there doing fucking campaign ads for Biden on the fucking student loan crisis. And that's his fault.
Trump for. So I see that as a massive waste of the working class money to do that again, especially someone running in the Democratic Party and someone I view as being a little bit too soft on Biden Democratic Party. So I'm going to ask you, why do you think people should invest in your campaign considering what we already wasted?
Well, I think much of what you said is a legitimate argument. I think there are a lot of legitimate points to be made here. One of the times I saw you, Sabby, you were mentioning something that I had said about running as a Democrat and being nostalgic for the Democratic Party of FDR. And you said on your show, Marianne, that Democratic Party doesn't exist anymore.
Fuck FDR.
Well, you're right, actually. And that's why I was hoping you were actually going to write. I almost want to say, well, let me on, because.
Can we talk? FDR is not.
Yeah.
Like, FDR is a capitalist, first and foremost. FDR is the savior of capitalism.
Right.
I forgot who said it, but I think it's Chris Hedges who FDR saved capitalism.
Right. But it's funny how people refer to FDR as like a based president when many of his policies, again, did not change the outcomes of Black people in this country.
No, instead, what it did was all FDR did was delay the outset of post-capitalism to a further date. He set it back like 100 years. So now we're getting it now instead of, 100
But no,
years.
it kind of pisses me off when people like Kyle, like say, "Oh, FDR was a great president."
FDR is like the biggest compromise you can get. That's all that. It's unfortunate. But.
You're right. And I certainly understand someone your age. You haven't even seen that Democratic Party, whereas I at least have some institutional memory.
No,
my point to that is so the corporatist Democrats would say to progressives,
you were 10 during JFK.
That we're trying to hijack the party. They hijack the party. Now, your argument seems to be then don't even give any money or anything to do with the Democratic Party. I can see that argument. But to me, there's another argument which aligns with my view more.
What is
which
that?
is, first of all, I don't agree that Bernie Sanders made no difference. Medicare for all is now a mainstream issue in a way that it would never have been had he not run. The whole idea of the egregious gap between the functioning of this government and advocacy for the working people of the United States, I don't think would be in the mainstream dialogue the way it is had Bernie Sanders not run for president. And I also think and once again, I'm not saying.
A very simple answer could have been said to this question.
Right.
But she goes on
in a way that it would never have been had he not run.
Hold on, pause
of this government and advocacy for the working people of the United States.
Pause 1 second.
I don't think.
Notice what Nick asked her. Nick asked.
Some institution.
The working class gave the money.
By investing that kind of money is literally PR agents of the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders.
Notice what Nick asked her. Nick asked her, basically, the working class gave their money and their time and their resources to Bernie and by proxy the squad, only for them to basically coattail to the establishment. You're running for president now. Why should people waste their time on you, knowing that you're going to run in the very party that that Bernie and the squad basically do anything for. So
yeah, but
I really,
if you basically want to sum that up, and you like, if I were to like tell it like to Marianne straight to her face, or even the Vanguard, like I'm asking you guys honestly, genuinely, and with curiosity, I want to know what your strategy is. How many fucking times are we gonna do this? How many times are we gonna do it? How many? How many times are we gonna try doing this before we try the third party option? Can someone tell me?
no, but that's just it. They're not going to try the third party option
So we're
because
just gonna keep doing this? Is this what we're? That's the plan? Is that the plan? We're just gonna keep doing this over and over and over again. That's what you guys want. You want to do this again
well,
after all that time,
again,
all 8 years, and all that money. We're not getting that back. Say what you were gonna say. Sorry.
righteous anger in the room. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but you know what? I really appreciate Nick asking that. Like, because honestly, given right there, this interview was over. Honestly, because that should have been an easy layup for Marianne, and I think especially given she's had enough experiences, at least talking to people that we know in the space who are part of the working class to understand why people are angry. And basically she gave Nick and Sabby like lip service here in terms of, like it's obvious she doesn't care about how we feel about in terms of like what's happened, because if she did, she would have said, like, I understand, why many people are hurting, but this is what I propose to do in terms of when I run for because it's still exploratory community, but if I run for president, here's my essentially like my demands, essentially, or something to that end. Like if she phrased it that way, I think a lot of people would have felt a little more, a lot better and confident of, and maybe be like, okay, well, maybe we can give Marianne a chance. But she didn't do that here. She basically kind of gave a runaround answer just as far as the Democratic Party and how nostalgic she was of the past. Again, as I said, I think that kind of speaks to her privilege, like, it probably was good for her, but it wasn't good for others, and she didn't answer Nick's question. So, and given that I think she said she only had 20 minutes to give them, I think this is kind of a disservice to not only herself, but also to Nick and Savvy for the time they wasted, but also their audience who were kind of expecting something more out of her.
Well, she recognized in the beginning that like she knew that like she was going into a rough
right.
Right. She was like, okay, like I know, I have seen what you guys said about me. Like it's not like a question.
Party completely bought and sold by the corporatists. We have another party which tries to have it both ways. But if we all leave,
that's not true. It doesn't have.
Then
it's one way. It's a corporate party. There's no difference.
You say if all of us say to hell with the Democratic Party and just leave, then you're going to have two. Already we have a corporate duopoly. Already we have a situation. We have one party completely bought and sold by the corporatists. We have another party which tries to have it both ways. But if we all leave, then you've got two major parties doing that. So I simply submit that it is as legitimate, those of us who feel like working within the Democratic Party, as those working out. To me, the break.
You guys sacrifice great energy. So the working class, we only have a finite amount of resources. We're not like the corporations. So neoliberals and the conservatives, they can spend endless amount of money on this cast. That $100 million is $100 million that not going.
Yeah, but that was not. That was a working person who gave $5 or gave $10, or I would argue that many people I know who are working people who gave $5 or $10 feel that money went towards Bernie being able to put on the stage the ideas that he did. I feel the same way about my talking about reparations.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah. And Bernie abandoned his outside movement. Like we had marches for Medicare for All that we couldn't get the people to tweet about. And Medicare for All as a movement within the Democratic Party is dead. And
just want to say thanks to Reef here. Care Bear and the Crab.
Thank you,
Biden,
Reed.
I'm sorry, Bernie killed
Maybe
the
that's the new
revolutionary
brand.
energy needed while
Maybe
people
we
was
just
asking and
put
demanding Medicare for all.
Care Bear and
By now telling people that the Democratic Party and
That was
Biden
like
is
a children's
okay.
book name.
Biden said he would veto Medicare for
Care
all.
Bear and
There's not even a discussion on the public option. So there's no
But see-
argument to be made that we've gone forward on the healthcare issue. We have gone backwards because now you got progressives, DSA, sheep herding people to the Democratic Party that would never give you Medicare for all.
Well, I think we have gone forward in terms of a mainstream conversation. Listen, I'm not here as Bernie Sanders' PR agent, and you have your views and I have mine. And I think that's really what this is all about. None of us have a monopoly on truth. I think all of us have pieces of it. Truth is a kaleidoscope
I
to me.
understand.
And, you know,
I just want to.
I want to get you in on this. I just want to ask a follow up to that because I want to make sure I asked the original question because I didn't want you. I wasn't trying to put you on the back heel defending Bernie. The question is like, why after that investment, seeing how disappointing these politicians and some of those people you still apologize for, why should we make that?
Wait, before you say some of those you still apologize for, who am I apologizing
Bernie,
for?
like Bernie has been a massive disappointment. So what I'm saying, like even if you don't run, because that's just a rumor, our criticism is running within the Democratic Party and wasting resources and energy that should be spent on third parties and outside mutual aid organizations. So my question is, why should people invest in your campaign after seeing the waste that I would consider a waste, after seeing him support war, being responsible for Raytheon and Boeing making record profits? That's a waste. He did not do what we sent him to do. So why should people invest in that?
Well, first of all, that's your view. I don't even see Bernie exactly as you do. But if I run, people should hear what I say. And if they believe what you believe, then they shouldn't vote for me. This is a democracy. This is what a democracy is about. You have your view. I have my view. And I don't think, there's a saying in AA, attraction, not promotion. I'm not going to be trying to manipulate anybody. And
Pause.
seeing
You gotta
what I see.
rewind that
I'm going to put
part.
out what.
You gotta rewind that part like 20 seconds.
Make sure I
Rolling back really
I didn't want you. I wasn't trying to put you on the back heel defending Bernie. The question is like, why after that investment, seeing how disappointing these politicians and some of those
rephrasing the same question.
Wait, before you say some of those you still apologize for, who am I apologizing for?
Like Bernie has been a massive disappointment. So what I'm saying, like even if you don't run, because that's just a rumor, our criticism is running within the Democratic Party and wasting resources and energy that should be spent on third parties and outside mutual aid organizations. So my question is, why should people invest in your campaign after seeing the waste that I would consider a waste, after seeing him support war, being responsible for Raytheon and Boeing making record profits? That's a waste. He did not do what we sent him to do. So why should people invest in that?
Well, first of all, that's your view. I don't even see Bernie exactly as you do. But if I run, people should hear what I say. And if they believe what you believe, then they shouldn't vote for me. This is a democracy. This is what a democracy is about. You have your view.
You can't say like the sky is blue and then you say like I see it different. Well, because like objectively, most people see it one way, right? And just because like you see it differently doesn't change that at all. And it's not going to help you run for president. I'm sorry. But what were you going to say?
No, it's first of all the fact that shout out to Nick, like because
Nick
he came around as like in his way. It's like you didn't answer the question, so I'm going to ask you again. But then like Marianne was just basically like, well, if you don't like what I have to say, don't vote for me. Okay, great. I wasn't going to vote for you anyway. But why should people bother? Because the reality is I think she feels like, oh, I can just get in and like just talk my way in and just say the things that people want me to say and not necessarily have people give me some financial support or whatever else and all be fine and good. The reality is, especially with the Democratic Party / DNC, they have the resources, as Nick said, to take down anyone they want to take down. We saw what happened with Bernie in 2020, so the idea that she's not, again, my issue is she's not saying anything. She's not making any, she's not coming with any demands. She's not coming with any strategy
because that's
terms
what
of what she's going to do and what she's going to say that's going to give people confidence to be like, but like as far as, okay, I can support this woman. And honestly, like if she were better at this, she would mention, like, I understand it's inflation right now. Right. But if she were more considerate, she would have said something towards the lines of like, I understand right now it's inflation right now. Job price, like things are a lot more expensive. People are trying to make their ends meet. like I think we're
She
doing
would get down to your level. She would
right.
like sit down. She would sit down and like personalize and empathize with you.
Right.
That's
And
what,
she didn't
I
do,
mean, that's
and
what an
she
effective politician does. That's what Bernie Sanders did.
right. And she didn't do that. So for me, it was kind of like she didn't, that would have been a key point to kind of answer into Nick's question in terms of why should people invest in you? Like in terms of, like we've been burned by Bernie, and Nick didn't say this, but it's like people are struggling right now. People don't have the money to just give in the same way that they gave to Bernie willingly, So
And on top of that, like you're not even relating to us. You're not even like there's no like there you have to like there's a certain level like of elitism that occurs in these people that like when there's like like a celebrity like fantasy behind these people, especially like on these like different like clouds on Twitter. They're essentially like they I mean, well, they view themselves as celebrities, certainly.
Mhm.
And so like they kind of have trouble, like I mean, especially like I mean, I'm assuming this is just like the same like complex as like being an upper class politician, but like the inability to connect with working class people is a fundamental trait that once you don't like not even having that, plus on top of that you're talking in circles, like no dude, I'm sorry,
right.
no thanks,
Right. Yeah,
no thanks.
I felt that was, and
Like-
actually you made a good point. Like this was her moment to kind of come down to our level and kind of either share.
And she didn't do
sympathy
that.
or like
She talked
yeah.
about herself. She talked about herself. That's
Mhm.
what she did instead.
Right.
Because she's running for Congress because she wants to be in the squad's Instagram pictures. That's what it is.
Right.
I have my view, and I don't think there's a saying in AA: attraction, not promotion. I'm not going to be trying to manipulate anybody into seeing it the way I see it. I'm going to put out what I believe, and people will do what they want to do. And I think in terms, particularly those of us who are aligned on so many issues, we shouldn't let the fact that we see things differently in this area or that area keep us from working towards a cohesive movement that would be a fundamental economic reform in this country.
Yeah, thank you.
So Marianne, you mentioned reparations. That's one of the questions that I had is, a while back we had this discussion about reparations. I think you educated a lot of people.
I want to give like a little tiny bit of credit for Marianne for saying that fundamentally, like aside from all the other issues, that the focus is economic reform. Do I believe her? Not necessarily. But I'm just saying, I think that was like a segment of like what could have been a good answer.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When you came on to talk about that. And since then, I've talked about it every now and then here and there. And other people have come on that are reparations activists trying to push for that as well. In 2020, for your presidential campaign, that was like your number one issue. And so I'm curious, if you do decide to run in 2024, will that still be your number one issue? And if so, how will you persuade the segment of the progressive or the left per se that is against reparations? Because when I do have these discussions on my show, I notice the audience is like 50-50, like 50% is for it and the other 50% is like, no, don't talk about it because it's divisive. How will you persuade those progressives that are against reparations?
If I run, the governing principle, the governing strategy is to say what I think needs to be said. It's like I was just saying to Nick, it's not about persuading. I'm going to say what I think. And I'm going to say what I would do if I were president. And then you either vote for me or not. I'm submitting the belief.
Wait,
okay.
It's not about persuading.
And the other 50% is like, no, don't talk about it because it's divisive. How will you persuade those progressives that are against reparations?
If I run, the governing principle, the governing strategy is to say what I think needs to be said. It's like I was just saying to Nick, it's not about persuading. I'm going to say what I think. And I'm going to say what I would do if I were president. And then you either vote for me or not.
Stop. Problematic there. Like she said, I'm going to say what I think. No, we don't want you to say what you think. We want you to say what we're saying.
Yeah, like this isn't about when you run for Congress.
This isn't about you.
When you run for president, this is not about you. This is not about you. This is about us.
Right. So,
and that's a fundamental misunderstanding that is not going to make her a good politician. I'm sorry. Regardless of not, like she says here.
The governing strategy is to say what I think needs to be said. It's like I was just saying to Nick, it's not about persuading. I'm going to say what I think, and I'm going to say what I would do if I were president, and then you either vote for me or not.
Okay. We just won't. All
Yeah.
right. Problem solved. Why do
Right.
we have all this drama for?
Right.
Okay,
So-
we just won't vote for you then.
But
Good
yeah,
luck,
but
because you're
isn't-
not going to win.
Right.
But like,
that's
I'm just saying, like, okay,
but this
that's
is
it. We
but
could have
this is
ended
the
it right
idea.
there.
But that's the key of politics. Like or any activism. Like that's my job. Like my other hustle. You know, like my job is to persuade people to think in a certain way because of XYZ. That's your job. Your job is to persuade us to be like, why should we give a damn that we will be willing to open up our wallets for you and support you? You know? So she's basically like, you don't need to do that. It's just kind of like, as you said, fine, we won't. You know? So, you know, that right there is just kind of like, you know, as I said, I think she basically gave the game away like first 5 minutes. But she really has kind of dug herself into a hole here in terms of, and I surprised that people didn't catch that, like in terms of like her saying, I want to say what I'm going to say. No, you're going to say based on what we tell you because we've had open communication with you. So that just kind of shows she's not about us. She's about herself and like her status.
Yeah. She is a narcissist. She's completely in her own head, and it's been about her ego the whole time. The whole time. Do you want to fast forward to the meltdown?
I want to get to the
Is there any
dirty break.
chunk in this that you remember that you wanted to?
What?
Is
I want to get to the dirty break part. We don't need to get to.
I'm submitting the belief that this country cannot move forward without healing our past. I submit that there is a debt that is owed. I submit that we have, we had 250 years of slavery. We had, except for the 12 years of Reconstruction, another 100 years of institutionalized oppression of Black people in the American South. I probably talked to you before, Sabby, on your show about how I've had the experience many times with white audiences feeling there's such undereducation that when they really see it, they go like, yeah. Right? I believe that that's the job of a president and of a candidacy to put something out there, the kind of huge bully pulpit. And now we had in the 1960s, we had the Voting Rights Act, which has been gutted. We had the Civil Rights Act. I think that if King had lived, and if either Johnson or Humphrey had been president next, I think there's a good chance it would have gotten to the third piece that's necessary, and that's economic remuneration. And until we do, we will be handing this toxic baton one generation to the next. The chances of, the value of the fact that I'm not from that system, the chances are so minuscule that I would become president. There's nothing to keep me from saying what I really believe, whether somebody agrees with me or not. I believe we owe reparations. If part of the left doesn't like it, it's no different than my beliefs about anything else. Somebody doesn't like it, it's not. I'm a grown woman. I'm going to say what I believe needs to be said. I'm going to hear other people's opinion because sometimes, none of us have a monopoly on truth, and I might be changed. But I don't see my opinion being changed on reparations because to me, it's a moral issue. It's a spiritual issue. It's a psychological issue as well as an economic issue. And I would love nothing more than to be the president who says, we don't need another commission to gather evidence. We know the evidence. Let's sit down. Let's do some negotiation. Let's get this done. The very thought is so exciting to me. It's worth running for president.
Can someone please tell me, like, how do you watch that and you don't get AOC vibes from that at all?
Yeah. No, it's just another word salad. Like,
you don't feel like the AOC in that?
Well, basically, and Reeve knows this, like, because we've talked about this. Like, basically, if my head hurts trying to understand what you're saying, you're not saying anything. My head hurts right now.
I don't even want to keep up. But like, this is like, she's so fucking. She wants to talk so much. It's ridiculous.
I'll pass it to Nick.
Great question, Sabby. Reparations, something that I'm very passionate about. That's something that I gave props to you before as well. And that's actually kind of to the tweet that I mentioned before. But it's good to be good on the issues of reparations. The problem is the Democratic Party would never, ever give us that without this kind of struggle. And that's why
I'm sorry.
No,
unless,
Go ahead.
Well, unless we elect more progressives. This struggle that you're talking about of suppressing progressive voices on the presidential level, as I'm sure you realize.
What happened?
She basically said the only way we can get something like reparations is if we voted more progressives.
No, wait.
Bernie is not for reparations.
The problem is the Democratic Party would never ever give us that without
At least for black people.
And that's why
I'm sorry.
no,
Unless-
I want to hear from you. Go ahead.
Well, unless we elect more progressives, this struggle.
She did. Okay.
Right. And as I said just now, like Bernie wasn't for reparations for black people, at least, either. So what makes you think that having more progressives in the party is going to make the idea of reparations more palatable?
Yeah, there's no strategy. There's no plan here. There is none. There never was one. Because it's about her.
Right. Like
You're
Indy
talking
said,
about
it like progressives like Hakeem, basically.
Yeah, like honestly, just fuck off at this point. Like she said it herself. Vote for me or not. Okay, that's like when she said that. When her saying like, or
the left person
move forward with. I believe that that's the job of a president in the 1960s. That if King had and if that's now took baton one generation, we shouldn't let the fact that we think who am I apologizing for?
Like,
what are you looking for?
I'm not saying Bernie Sanders gap between the functioning of this government and advocacy for the working people of the United States. I don't think would be in the mainstream dialogue the way it is. Or I would argue that many people I know who are working people who gave $5 or $10 feel that money about my time
is for Medicare for all. And for all, even a discussion now, you got
gone forward in terms of a mainstream conversation. That's really what this is all. And
because I didn't want you. I wasn't trying to put you on the back heel defending Bernie. You still apologize for it. It's been a massive disappointment. So what I am saying, sources, should people? So why should
there's a saying in AA: attraction, not promotion. And people, we shouldn't let the fact that we see
the questions that I had is, a while back we had this about it every now and then here and there, and other people have come on that are reparations activists trying to push for that as well. In 2020 for your presidential campaign.
Look what they did to Nina Turner. Even the Progressive Caucus didn't support her. Even the Black Caucus didn't support her. So that corporatist element suppressing progressive voices in the Democratic Party occurs on the congressional level, just like it does on the president. And the only way to override that is through a massive political revolution at the ballot box. So where you take that to go third party, that makes me say we got to get in there. And I don't think either of us is wrong. I just think we have to do everything, whatever our gut says, our heart, go for it.
See, like I was gonna say, like this idea of like, I'm in charge, like I'm gonna take heed of the movement. I'm gonna be a star, and I'm gonna do. This was, I mean, first of all, this was like the imagination of everyone already running for Congress. This is the same thing for Cori Bush, AOC. There's all this story of like, I'm this progressive hero, and I'm gonna run for president. I'm gonna save the country, and it's just not like something that's like viable under what your mainstream practice. Like you're not genuinely and honestly, you're not going to get anywhere. To her saying, oh, just vote for me or not. That's like her equivalent of like Joe Biden's like, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. It's the same thing. It just on a cherry, like
Well, it's not so much.
It's just a nice version of it.
She doesn't have anything worth. Again,
there's no platform, there's no plan, there's no connection, there's nothing.
Right. It's just more or less of, vote for me, maybe, to possibly counter Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. That's really what she's offering. Like she said, my job is not to basically convince you. Yes, it is. And I think especially now where people are just so frustrated and just so tuned out with the duopoly and just government in general, like you have to bring something to the table in terms of making us excited. Bernie was
I think it's important to like bring like a clear distinction. Like you don't have to convince everyone on the planet. I'm saying like a voting majority.
No, but if she's determined to be like the next generation Bernie.
You have to like crowd people.
Yeah, you got to bring something to the table, and you got to
need
bring,
to really
and actually in this
inspire a
case,
movement.
and actually in this case, you have to bring something a little different from Bernie. I just feel like right now she's just trying to ride off Bernie's coattails and basically just being like, I'm just going to do his whole campaign except I'm a woman, and that should be enough. And at this point, it's not enough. Like, if anything, right now we're demanding a lot more than what we demanded of Bernie. And more importantly, we're demanding her to fight, you know, like not just fight, but to offer something to the table that, you know, like is not exactly like a repeat of what happened with Bernie in 2016 and 2020. If she's not able to do that, you know, and Jamal is like, she thinks reparations is the way to do it, which to me is pandering, you know, because you know, the reality is that she's right. Like, or someone said it, like reparations is not going to happen anytime soon, given our current Congress right now. And having more progressives is not also going to bring reparations to the table. I think in this case, that's something that will have to come from the outside as far as direct action, you know. But even with that, it's like, what about reparations are you for, Marianne? Like, what would that look like for Black people? You know, like she, you know, I think just saying the word doesn't mean that we're automatically going to buy in for you, you know? So that's kind of like my issue with her here with this. It's like, she doesn't give any details or specifics as far as what a reparations package should be, other than talking about like, Black people are owed a debt. Okay. You know, and I know she's done her research on this. Sabby had her on her show and she explained it to her. Why didn't she bring that up here? So, you know, and I feel like Sabby could have pushed back a little bit. Again, given for time, probably just wanted to get for the questions that they wanted to ask. But I felt like Sabby could have said, you know, like, can you please describe more of what that looks like for you? At minimum, just to give people confidence of being like, okay, she's serious, rather than just saying, I know Black people want reparations. I know Bernie was opposed to reparations. So that's the one difference between Bernie and I, and everything else is completely the same.
It's kind of reversed by some of the other policies that she supports. But you remember when she tweeted it, and I fucking should have pulled it up. But remember when the White House tweeted out they were sending weapons to Ukraine, like right in the beginning, like right around this time last year, and then she tweeted, "Quickly, please."
No, I don't.
Weapons to Ukraine. Oh my god, I'm gonna look at that and like.
Yeah, I love the energy, and I never dissuade people for taking their shots. And I always say that our focus should be 15% electoral politics, not that much. That 15% is organizing for stuff like reparations and class wins. I have a theory. I'm not sure if I'm 100% right, like we all say, but I have a theory that, especially with, as you said, Black Caucus, Democratic Party, you got all these neoliberals that are against reparations. There's no way that as a Black community, we are getting what we want politically through the two-party duopoly. We are 13% of the population, and both parties wedge that. They wedged that against us, and we voted for the Democratic Party at a 90% rate every single year. So they don't even run on our issues. Everyone else get their issues except ours. Yeah. The only theory I have of change in terms of electoral politics, which I wouldn't put that much stock in, the only theory of change that makes sense to me is as Black people and our allies, we form third parties, and then we force the politicians to carve that support. So if you lose an election as a Democrat because you lost a Black vote, I guess the next candidate has to run on reparations then, right? So that's why third parties have to be a leveraging tool of our community who gets nothing. Under the Biden administration right now, Black Americans are weak. Our community has been destroyed. The police are stronger than ever. We get nothing going through the strategy. So with 50, this is my question. 50% Americans said they're ready for a third party. So we need that spark. We need something that will start that. So we need people that want to run third party to start this spark. So I want to ask you this, like, what is your objection towards doing that, if there is one?
Well, first of all, there was a lot of teeth in the first things that you said. This issue of the Democratic Party being taken for granted, I mean, Black America being taken for granted by the Democratic establishment. But I would argue that you would, if Black America wanted to say to the Democratic establishment, don't take us for granted, voting for someone like me would be as effective as voting for someone in a third party, because you're still outside the context of the corporatists who are running on the same old, same old.
But you're not.
Bernie Sanders, despite the things that you said, many of which were true, did come within striking.
Hey, there's a point I believe in Bernie, but sorry, go ahead. I'm just saying it was disappointing, man. But sorry, go ahead.
I understand, and I understand. I get it. I totally get it, and I agree with that. Bernie,
that's as far as she's gonna go as like connecting with you one on one. As far as she'll say like, yeah, I understand. She'll never talk about the wealth gap. She'll never talk about your lack of health care. She'll never talk about any of the real issues. I think she was in the Medicare for All March.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She spoke there.
Mm-hmm.
So like honestly, there's problematic
striking distance of the presidency. You know, the way I look at it, and once again, I don't think this is really an issue of right or wrong. It's an issue of a lot of ways to look at it, and everybody having to find where they feel their skill set can be most helpful. Bernie, if I run, and I run as a Democrat, it's going to be very inconvenient for the Democratic establishment. They will want to invisibilize me.
No, it's not. No, it's
just look at the Iowa caucus. Just like this is like fundamental to our understanding of like how
if anything,
Democratic Party,
if anything, like any opposition within the Democratic Party, they know how to get rid of it and have the money to get rid of it very quickly.
And can we let's just make this clear. The Iowa caucus is simply all we need as pure evidence that even when it comes comes close, like when it comes down to it, the DNC, they'll find a way. They'll chat you. They'll find a way to, cut you off.
But if I run as a third party candidate, it will be so easy to do that. I feel that if I'm in there, I can get in there. I can say, Joe Biden, you got to debate me. I can go in there. I can put these things on the table. So yeah, I think there needs to be vital.
She wants to be on the stage again. She just wants to be on the stage again. That's what it is.
Third party efforts. I don't think that
because we don't like this idea of like having to shift the conversation. We already did that. We don't need that.
I'm the one to do that. And by the way, too, phenomenal mysticism. Marianne Williamson is ultra uncomfortable during this interview. You can feel it. No, I'm not.
I just want to jump in really quick and say, why not? Like, I've kind of changed the focus, at least like on my show, to focus more so on local politics, because in reference to the progressive policies and progressive issues, I've seen them pass on the local level. So I'm kind of fortunate. Right. I'm in Massachusetts. We've passed a lot of these things, the $15 minimum wage, the wealth tax. We've already passed a lot of those issues. But I've also seen red states pass those issues as well, Marianne.
Like Kansas with the abortion thing recently. That's where ground zero is now. Is on local and state. Absolutely.
Exactly. So looking back at it, I look at people like some of the members of the squad, and I feel that people like Cori Bush, AOC, I feel like they actually would be more effective on the local level. They went into Congress, they went into the swamp, and they're obviously heavily controlled by Democratic leadership. That's one of the issues that Dennis Kucinich had. That's one of the issues that Cynthia McKinney had, is that they call the shots. Why not run for something on the local level, or is that something that you have considered?
This is a really good question. This is a really, really good question. And Sabby, I know she's here right now. I want to give her props for that. Yeah. Because she would be far more effective on the local level as opposed to running.
Why would she, though? Why would she? Why?
There's less barriers to entry generally.
I reported on this week when I talked about Kashama Sawant. According to some documents, articles that I looked at, I had to check on his salary. Kashama, at least with what I saw, made, or at one point made, about $140,000 a year, of which she gave $100,000 of that towards direct action things. So she's basically living on $40,000 a year. Now, despite all of that, and I forgot where Marianne is based right now, and I'm not sure if every city councilman or woman will make about that salary, but let's say,
which I don't even think that makes a difference.
Let's say, for all intents and purposes, you make about $100K. Just give a conservative figure. Marianne is a multi-millionaire. Why in the fuck would she want to do that for that kind of money you know, and not a lot of recognition given her. Again, she's famous. Like, why would that would be kind of like a step down for her? Like, why would she want to do that? If she, I make the argument, if she wanted to do that,
This sounds horrific. I just want to say that sounds like fucking terrible. But go ahead.
Yeah, I saw, like, yeah, I know that they're having that fundraiser. I know I'm not in the means to watch it, you know, so whatever. And Jordan says that he's a part, like, he's not a part of that bubble, whatever. Anyway, yeah, like,
I talked to Jordan. I think either like on a call in or like a Zoom call once, and he tried to tell me that he didn't know about like Bellingcat's like federal connections.
but
Like you're gonna tell me you're a journalist and you have no idea.
Yeah,
you definitely have. You definitely know.
But anyway, like, all that to say, this is a step down for Marianne. She's not going to go run for city council, like, which is why I said on Wednesday, like, the idea of what Kashara Sawant is doing in terms of she's essentially taking a demotion in order to essentially become an organizer, to become, like, you know, from being a city councilwoman. Like, normally, the next step is either mayor or Congress, and the fact that Kashama is willing to not do that and kind of be an organizer in knowing the needs of the working class, I think to me, you know, like, it's a lot more promising for me than someone like Marianne, you know, who's wanting to go to president as far as, you know, just, again, to elevate her own profile.
The fundamental difference between Marianne and someone like Sawant is that Sawant has a understanding of the urgency of the moment right now.
Right.
She's dropping down to the ground to organize because that's the level of time that we have right now. We're going to probably die of like a climate collapse in 100 years anyway. Right. But just to savor any sort of like whatever collapse is left, you might as well just like
But yeah, like, Marianne has a certain lifestyle she has to uphold. There's no way she's going to give up all of that up to become a city council.
Yeah, no. She wants to be able to be in the upper echelon tier. You know, being
that's
classy.
That's why
she wants
the
to
idea of running for president.
Go to the Met Gala, of course.
Yeah, that's why
she's going to be wearing the next Tax the Rich dress or whatever.
And you know what? Actually, pull up Indy's chat, because he makes a good point. He says, even with Oprah's endorsement, in a way, in the fact of, you know, she doesn't need our help, honestly. All she has to do is ask her rich friends to endorse her, and they probably would. So, you know, so when she says, don't vote for me, like, she, you know, she probably get the support of, like, maybe Oprah and perhaps some other people in Hollywood to be like, you know, oh, you know, Marianne's the real deal. We definitely know she's going to get Crystal's endorsement for sure.
Oh yeah, the whole club,
you know,
the whole club.
So,
Crystal, Kyle, Jordan, they're all going to be there.
Right. So I'm not sure about Jordan, but definitely Crystal. You know, but
will be there.
And Kyle. So, you know, but anyway, you keep going.
Yeah, I want to see when
one morning, and I got.
Dips out.
I'm going to run for city council. I've run for city council. I'm interested in changing the conversation in this country, and there is no platform for changing the national conversation like a presidential candidacy. And
Wrong.
I'm fortunate in that I do have.
No. That comes from people. That comes from activists. Your job is, well, like, especially in lower politician spaces, like, you elevate the needs of the activists up. Like, that's not your job necessarily. It's essentially what we tell you are the needs that you elevate, not the reverse. So very wrong here. So again, pretty much it's about me, and I can do it.
Like, enough of the fucking celebrity, like, star fucking stop. Like, stop with that bullshit. Like these people are we which we pay through our taxes are supposed to be a representation of all of us, and that's something that like that people need to understand. Is that like when you reference these people, they're not like they're people just running to represent you, and therefore that should reflect on your beliefs at least somewhat.
Being an author, having a national audience, I feel that my greatest contribution is to bring up certain topics that are not convenient to the system, to talk about genuine fundamental economic reform that, as Nick has pointed out, is not now occurring, the larger dynamic of American history, the aberrational chapter of the last 50 years, and the massive theft from the middle class and the poor in this country. I feel the way I can make the most powerful impact to make that case, to say it in a way that matters, if it would be to run, if in fact.
So you want to tweet, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
You want to tweet louder? Is that what it is? You just want more likes on your tweets? Dude,
Yeah.
enough of this conversation.
Feels like I can run. If I can't put together enough of a campaign to give it enough heft, then I won't do it. That's the period I'm in now, is discerning that. But that's what I want to do. I want to help upgrade the national conversation in the direction of justice.
She doesn't like Nick.
Man, I know you only have around 20 minutes, so I appreciate it.
I said this before, but the only reason she did this interview is because of Savvy. It's the only reason.
Any final question that you have, Sabi? Any final thoughts or any last words you have before we send you off? Sabi, go ahead.
Just one about foreign policy, because this is an area where the president can act alone and doesn't necessarily need the approval of Congress. So I'm curious to hear your.
Yeah, we could stop here. Like I forgot that I'm not sure if they talked about the dirty break here, but I think again.
No, that was like almost like explicitly a Vanguard thing.
Yeah, but even with that, you can kind of imply here. And out of respect, I don't think we should do the end. So, but you
don't want to go. You want to jump to the super chats one? Okay.
So what?
Wait, you want to jump to the next
So basically, Marianne gave a roundabout answer in my mind, as far as the dirty break. So when I went on Vanguard's show, I gave a super chat because they know me and they blocked me, for other reasons. And I knew they wouldn't necessarily talk to me unless I gave them a super chat. So I gave 2. So if you want to pull up the first one, which they read, because sometimes I've given them.
Which we can play. We have.
So actually, why don't you just play it? Because just to give you some context of what they said.
Can you give me the timeline, the timestamp again?
Hold on. I can pull it up on set. It is. Wait.
Now we're entering like podcast, whatever fucking like talk show.
I don't have the time stream for that one.
It's reacting to reacting to reacting. This is like the meta YouTube that we've gotten into.
Yeah. So, but I think it was toward the end. If you just scroll, of their stream, but I don't have the timestamp for that. So.
You texted it to me. Hold on.
I did.
Yeah.
Or it might be a little further up then.
Oh no, that was for a different video.
No, that was for a different video. Yeah. So. Wait.
Was it later
you
on?
You passed it. I think you passed it. It was yellow. No. So that's Lucy. So it's close. So
did you start? Who started it, Lucy or you?
Lucy. So I was after one of the ones after hers. So move forward.
Funding from our electoral and political system, great universal health systems, fully funded public education.
You can scroll more. Scroll more. More.
Dude, fuck these people. Because like, if you go to their chat too, it's all like it's literally like all like Sam Cedar people. Like there's just one like there's one specific user that's every single time, and he like brags about the fact that he's a Sam Cedar mod. Very strange. It's cultish behavior. Here it
I
is.
think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree. Not have.
In fact, one of my favorite dive bars in Kansas City, the one unfortunate thing about it is that they still have like a 2001 Nader equal Bush sticker on the door. I'm like, oh, this is so cringy. You know what I'm talking about? Shay Charlie has one.
Yeah. Also, shout out to you, Collin. I know you're a massive Vanguard hater, but appreciate you engaging with us regardless. Honestly, I do. If Marianne wanted
Pause
to
that.
I didn't see this.
run, she should run third party.
Pause.
Yeah.
I'm actually not. No, I'm not.
Actually, you know, like no one gives a fuck. Is really
I don't
what it
care.
is.
So no, I'm
No one
actually
fucking
not.
cares.
Like, I don't watch their show other than when I have to, which doesn't give me pleasure to. But yeah. So the fact that they kind of said that off the gate, you know, like go ahead.
And encourage voters to vote third party. People do not have the time or money to invest in a party that doesn't care about the working class. I mean, to an extent, I agree, Collin. And if she ends up just running as a Democrat and then not doing a dirty break, I think that's a valid criticism. And I do think it's valid to say, well, I'm not going to support that candidacy for the reasons that you've just outlined. But I think if you listen to Marianne Williamson's critiques of the Democratic Party, you'll hear that she doesn't want people to invest money or time in the Democratic Party as it is right now. She wants to go in there and change it, try to revert it back to its labor-oriented roots. She wants to do the hostile takeover strategy. And you can say that's naive, and that's fine. Obviously, like we just said, it's not likely.
Well, because, you know, there's problems with that. Because first of all, she never grew up in a time. She was 10 during JFK. That's like the most that she can like really. And I don't even want to bite her on that. I'm just saying there was never really a time where the Democratic Party was at some point a labor-focused party. It never was.
No.
It never was. Let's make that clear first, because like this nostalgia for FDR, we have to get over it. It's really fucking cringe and like dumb. It doesn't make any sense because like this is you're talking about an imperialist like president who basically, you know, gave you the soft option.
I think to be fair to Marianne, I think she's talking about in terms of like things like Social Security and like all
which like I get
things which didn't exist.
That's number one. That's only
like,
just one of the issues.
So I think the idea of having some of these socialist programs that we have now, like that where people were able to somewhat function like Medicare, you know, so like the elderly were able to have like health insurance and all that kind of stuff. I think that's what she's kind of talking about. But again, like I said, those programs didn't necessarily benefit Black people. So again, it's kind of not speaking to that privilege. It's kind of speaking in
There's
terms
a
of
fun, like it's like we keep coming back to this issue where like she has a fundamental misunderstanding of like what the working class's like perspective and what their desires are, what their goals are. She has no clue, and that's why she has no charisma whatsoever, and she has problems relating to people and getting votes because she's just a fucking bad politician. And what she's saying about the Democratic Party, like the only thing that she has to say, and she'll say, "Oh, I agree with you, but I see it differently," which you can say to like literally anything, right? You could say like, I think I already mentioned this, but like I could mention that wall is green, and objectively it's green, but I could always just say, yeah, but I just see it differently, and you might, but like really most people just see it green. It's not
that she would actually be successful in unseating Joe Biden. But as far as shifting the Overton window in the context of debates and the presidential campaign and the media attention that comes with running,
the Overton window has been further right than it ever has been in the United States, in the history of the United States. We're at the left right now is sending money to Nazis. I think that's pretty right. That's not the Overton window we're far
as a Democrat. I think
Overton window talk. We're not.
She could do serious work, much like Bernie Sanders did.
Because we're talking like I'm talking about like specific policy issues like Medicare for all, which the majority of Republicans support, the majority of Republicans, like Trumpers. So that's something that you can therefore run on and get votes for.
Mm-hmm.
In doing just that, shifting the Overton window back in a more leftward direction, regaining some of that momentum that Bernie was able to create around policies like Medicare for all, or in her case, reparations. And then in the event that she's cheated, which will likely happen, she would break off and decide to run as a third party, a Green Party candidate, and continue.
She never said that, though. She never said that.
Yeah, there was never like an agreement or like an understanding of that. She never mentioned that.
Or I'm going to be very fair. It wasn't a definitive yes, I will. It was more like she kind of was very nebulous in terms of her response. So, but they basically said, oh, she will, which is not true. She gave no indication that she was going to do the dirty break, when she was on their show. I think they kind of wanted her, even one or two things. They kind of inserted their thoughts into the interview that they did with her, or they kind of said that to kind of maybe appease the audience who I was in that chat. There were some who were basically like Jimmy Dore sucks or whatever, but there were many more who were like, you're wrong. Like, Marianne should do the dirty break, And so I think they might have said that possibly to kind of appease that audience but again, it's like, you're lying. She never, like, my thing is, and I said this earlier, the fact that they just focused on where the fallout with the RBN crew, like, really isn't the issue, because the reality is, and I said this to Indian Reef earlier, like, it happens. Like, we have disagreements, and then things happen, especially since this is live, things happen, If you were going to critique RBN correctly, and I know Due Dissonance did this, you would actually watch what was the context of this whole thing, which was the interview with Marianne but you decided to be all messy and do the last part with everything that would happen with the team as an own of basically like, oh, RBN sucks. When looking at what they said, Nick and Savvy gave great questions. They were very respectful, but they were very laser focused as to what they were asking. And it forced Marianne to give a lot of verbal vomit in terms of trying to think of stuff to say that will kind of appease them when it really wasn't happening, So if they had done that versus almost made fun of, the last part, I would have given them more credit here. But they didn't do that. And then I just had a problem that they used this as a way to send misinformation to their audience that Marianne did not say. So there's going to be a certain amount of people who might believe that Marianne is going to do or possibly do a dirty break when that wasn't the case. So
can I ask, what exactly? Because I don't see any scenario where you can possibly support both strategies. I feel like this tiptoeing the line bullshit where you're either doing the dirty break or you're not, or you'll see how they treat you, and then trying to run as a third party. Can you even do that? Like run as a Democrat in the primary and then?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. Party? If you're running for president, I know this was happening in 2020. You're supposed to sign something that basically says that you're not going to go for a party, or you're going to endorse whoever is the nominee. Someone correct me if I'm wrong.
It's problematic because, first of all, there's no time for this testing the waters bullshit. There's no time, and then second of all, I don't even know if it's possible. I don't even know if you can run as a Democrat, and I don't know. Maybe someone in chat can double check this, but like run as a Democrat in the primary, and then after you lose.
I personally have never heard of that. But the
I don't
fact
think that's
that,
ever
that
happened,
the
and I don't
fact
think you
that
even can. I don't even think you can.
no,
Honestly.
so the fact that that was even offered as an idea.
So this tiptoeing the line bullshit, enough. There's two conflicting strategies here. It's either
Like-
you do the dirty break or you don't.
Like,
And
I remember, like, again, this was kind of what during my apolitical, like as a teen, but like during my apolitical years, Ross Perot, again, kind of aging myself here, but I remember he ran as an independent. You know, like from the jump, he ran as an independent. Like, look at Jill Stein; she ran as an independent. And actually, if Marianne really wanted to,
you could do it vice versa. If anything, do it the other way.
right? You know,
I
but
mean,
but the idea of just being able to kind of jump ship from the Democratic Party if you don't get your way is laughable to me. But then, more importantly, I feel like Marianne, like, they're going to smear you anyway within the Democratic Party. They're going to use every tactic known in the book to make you less credible. So why would you want to go for the effort of that? Whereas if you're able to run independent, and as I said, and I had Akile Anai on INN News on Wednesday, and she talked about this, how she's editor-in-chief of the Burning Spear. That's a publication that's been around since the 60s. But the primary reason that that even exists now is because they're able to control the narrative in terms of what, like mainstream media might say about them. The big thing, like with the Hoover movement, was the raid, and basically what mainstream media was saying, like, oh, they're connected to Russia of some sort, which is not true. But having that media on, which is also what we kind of connected to Amazon and the ALU, could be the only way that you're able to kind of say whatever you want when you want to say it. And I said this on another stream, I believe, if not privately. That was something that, and I think people weren't necessarily talking about this, that was something that Bernie did very well in both campaigns. Like, he connected with young people, and he was very heavily, focused on social media.
And he went to colleges. He went to a lot of colleges.
Right.
That was important. That was an important part of his campaign. I would not have, like, if I didn't see Bernie at Rutgers, I think I wouldn't have like been as
right.
motivated to donate.
Bernie was able to get a lot of what he was saying because he wasn't necessarily getting any press. And if any press was going, was very much negative. Like, he had the social media arm of his campaign that was able to counter all of that. And he tailored it to millennials, well, millennials really at that point, probably, some Gen Z, that he was able to say what he wanted to say on his terms. Marianne should really, for all intents and purposes, given, her financial resources and her name recognition, she can easily do the same thing. But instead, she's choosing to go into a party that is very, and like, it's almost like she didn't learn her lesson back in 2020. Like, she knows that they're going to be against her. She knows that they're going to smear her. Why would you go through all that effort if you really are for trying to uplift the working class? And instead try to formulate your own connections and channels that you're able to share what you want to say. Like, if she really wanted to do reparations, start a YouTube channel or like a podcast or something like that, where she's able to talk about that more uninterrupted without mainstream media interference, because we know that's what's going to happen. So the fact that she's not doing any of that shows me that she's not serious. Like, again, she's using this as a means. I said she's like Trump. She's using this to benefit her career. And so, like, I'm not in a position to tell. I want to sound like Jordan in a second, but like, I'm not in a position where we're not in a position to tell you all what to do. But given all we can do is give you the information and kind of make the decision for yourself. But for me, I'm just kind of like, Marianne is a no-go for me. Never really was, but especially given these two interviews,
I
You
wasn't
know.
even thinking about it. I was like, this Marianne concept has escaped my mind in the past 2 years. There's no way at all. It's like I said, and I'm gonna say it again. Like what? Like we're gonna do this again?
Right.
We're really gonna do this again?
Right. This is literally like
Like,
insanity. Insanity. And the fact that, and again, look, I do this, like, especially with certain guests, I don't think, on INN News, we've had like a huge guest yet that like, I'm really kind of like, but I understand the feeling of, being afraid to ask certain questions of your guests because of certain things. And I think more importantly, in terms of your audience, what you think of you. But I think especially for me being in this space, and I think having a lot of examples, like, Reef and like folks at RBN, like, and other people who are very apologetic in their approach, like, you have to ask the tough questions. That's ultimately what people will appreciate, even though initially there may be some backlash. But if you're honest about who you are and if you're principled, then
that's the
people will.
problem. A lot of these people don't. They're not truly principled in the same sense.
No, no, and
They'll bend the knee and they'll be courteous to people who they like. They want the attention from, but not necessarily will feel like that they will benefit most people.
right, like
Mostly about attention, especially with I don't know how young the Vanguard are,
but I think this just shows their inexperience. This just shows their cowardice in a lot of ways. And it just shows what they're willing to do just
it's
to
the
get.
same thing with Ryan Grimm too.
Right. Yeah.
It's always like, and if you compare it to the Aaron Monte thing, they pick and choose who they want, and they'll be nice to the people who they like. And I don't even think like, well, what was it? Even the Lee Camp one, that was a disaster as well.
Right.
When he like showed like a little tiny bit of support for MPP, and then they like roasted him.
Right. But I mean, that's all I really want.
It's really childish, honestly.
Yeah, it is. And so that's why, as I said, I'm embracing my petty tonight. And I'm not
I told him, I'm like, why don't give him money? Why are you giving them money?
Honestly, I didn't want to give them that much, but I think it's worth it to just kind of show.
Yeah, you could have gave like 2 or something.
Well, with what I wanted to say with all those characters, it had to be 10. But I don't regret it though, because I think at least it kind of shows, it exposed them. It exposed them in their life. People like, and I know some people that did catch it. So I think it was important to kind of say this, more publicly, but it just kind of shows, what people are willing to do for access. So, but you
and then defend them later on. And then not only that, but then when she goes on a totally different interview that's completely unrelated to your channel, you have to make a smear video on it because you feel so friendly with this one particular politician that you have to like defend her. What? It sounds more like these people are more like shit stirrers. Is that not a fair characterization?
Yeah,
that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's just more like, again, if they really
sound like a shit stirrer. You don't sound that serious.
No, if they, again, as I said, if they really wanted to try and own RBN, they would have played.
That's what it was. Let's be honest here. It wasn't about Marianne. It wasn't about any of like this dirty break issue. It was about causing drama, and it was about getting clicks. Because if honestly, if you look at their channel, like a lot of I think like even RBN like has like covered it before, like their statistics, like only like their Jimmy Dore videos are the ones that get like actual views,
right?
And I remember like they actually like subbed to me at one point when they were like less than like 1,000 views, like subs, I mean,
right?
And then ever since they had that one Noam Chomsky interview, they just blew up overnight,
right? Like, I mean, I think it's almost kind of like Savvy was part of this. Like, we were on a stream with Eric, her producer, last night with Courtney Banks and then Reef Savvy. And I kind of mentioned this, in terms of our priorities on the left. I think in terms of the stories that are kind of, more commonplace. And I think, I kind of, like Reef and I, we're very particular of what stories we choose, and we report on every week. If it's something like this, and I was glad to do this with you tonight because I know you're trying to get in the space a little bit more, and and I wanted to do this anyway in light of this, so helping you out and helping the network out in this way, but like some of some of the stories that I really love and care about don't get any views. By our Force to Vote pre-recorded segment that we did a couple of weeks ago, I didn't think that was going to blow up, but that's our highest viewed clip on our channel so far. I mean, I'm happy for it because it helped us to get monetized. But at the same time, it's kind of like there are other stories that, I feel should take a lot more precedence that don't get as much views or get as much conversation around. Now, granted, Force to Vote was a huge topic, but I wish that other stories, and not necessarily with the smear stuff, gets the attention. And I think in light of that,
When was the last time these people covered like on the ground issues, like strikes or like? Honestly, I don't pay attention.
I did. Like 2 weeks ago.
No, the Vanguard. I'm saying.
I don't think they ever have.
Is this like the only thing that's going to be Biden weak in polls in 2024 polls? Like, does anyone give a fuck? Does anyone give a fuck about how Joe Biden is in the polls right now?
No.
Does it matter?
I mean, for most people, no. Like, people are concerned about how much their grocery bill is. People are concerned of how much gas they have to put in their tank in order to get to work. People are worried about schools right now. People are worried about their safety. People are worried. There's a lot more pressing things that people are worried about versus like what Joe Biden is doing. Not to say that's not important, but people are economically hurting. And really, we should be reflecting those stories in terms of elevating those needs, to people in Congress. Like Savvy, she said, yeah, she covers on the ground actions too, and we are trying to do a lot more of that. We're trying to build our platform up that hopefully, since I'm in DC, I have more access to that. So I'll be able to do that, more readily when I can. But those are the stories that we really should be covering. And I think for us, at least for Reef and INN, I know Indy too, that's why we don't talk about this stuff often, because we just think there's really there's only certain ways that you can kind of talk about a topic before it's kind of dead, so we want to kind of focus on our, if you want to watch that, you can watch several other channels for certain things. But
yeah, and there's only so many times you could do this clickbaity shit where you're doing RBN's unhinged meltdown during Marianne Williamson interview. The more you do that, the more it's going to become apparent to people. Okay, you don't care. You just don't care at all. You're just not serious.
Yeah,
you're not a serious person.
But
in the words of Nick,
right? But but I think we have a unique situation right now. I think, and I said this on stream a month ago. So we really on the left really need to kind of reboot and regroup and try and figure out what we're doing. But some of the stronger stuff is not going to help us. And so we will do this on this network every once in a while, but it's not going to be a commonplace thing for us, But we also know that's what the algorithm prioritizes and sometimes likes. So it's kind of like that, dance as far as doing the things that we know is going to get the attention. But when you're here, it's we're going to give you the stories that you should know about or you may not even know about. Um,
Well,
and
sometimes I feel like sometimes like these relative like cultural like issues kind of like also semi like fall in line with the like more serious topics. Like for instance, like this is a case where like we're talking about Marianne Williamson, like a Democrat from the 2020 election that like had some promise and is running again and is now doing this indie media run. I mean, she appeared on 2 different networks already. So she's trying to grab attention and focus from the left,
right.
right?
So actually, I want to respond to this. Like, Child of God just said, I don't see why you are still entertaining the latte left. Like, here's the thing. At least for this, I wouldn't call it entertaining. I think the thing is, for Vanguard people, like not all, but many, that's what they're going for. They're going to be entertained. I want to make a point here, in terms of things that they said, and which was not true, that might misguide their audience to kind of think of something that was very counter to what was said.
I think overall the purpose of this stream is like kind of like really kind of just like really kind of break this down and address this.
Right.
But
so yeah, I did pay them for a message, true. Like John was saying. Yeah, I'm aware of that, and I totally own that. And again, and just a little transparency. I was really, I should not have gone to Vanguard, honestly. Like, they happened to be on, and like, I was just curious to see what they were going to say, and they frustrated me what they were saying, because it wasn't correct necessarily, and then they blocked me, on Twitter. So the only way that I knew that they would respond to me in a way that I felt was fitting was giving them a super chat, So, and again, I don't make that common practice, as many of you know. So, but I did want to say that because, at least for us, I think for many of us, we try to provide you guys the truth. We can't tell you necessarily what to do with it, but we want to give you the truth of what mainstream are telling you and other people are telling you, so that you can make the decisions that best fit the needs of what you need to do. That's really all that that's all why we're here. And so, but at the same time, it's like, this needs to be called out as well, and I'll be transparent with you, and like for us too. It's like, if we get stuff wrong, tell us, because we do our best to kind of give you guys accurate information, but sometimes we may not necessarily be able to, depending on the circumstances. Call us out on it, and we will definitely give a retraction or redo the story in a way that makes sense. I'm very honest with that, only because like, I'm always fearful of that, of like what I'm putting out there may not necessarily be right. But I care about that because we care about what you guys are thinking and what you guys are kind of taking in. So,
you sent a second super chat after this, right?
What?
Did you send a second one after this? There was 2, right?
That was 2. I don't think it's really necessary, because I talked about Kashama and I talked to her about her enough.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think we need to go for the Vanguard anymore, because it's very obvious. Like, they have their own thing that they're trying to do. They have a right to do it. I don't agree with it. They can do them. We're going to do our thing. But I just wanted to point that out because, as I said, they misled their audience into thinking that Marianne was going to do something that she didn't say she was going to do. And as I said, if they watch RBN stream and actually watch the interview, they would have had a little more insight into that. And maybe they would not have, in a way, done them dirty like they tried to, So yeah, that's really all I got to say on that.
Then let's just close it out here. And I think honestly, it's like what Marianne said, like just, either vote for me or not. And then, you know what? Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I guess
So
not.